we're at the Milton Sports Celebrity Dinner. A real pleasure for me to catch up with Dan Loiselle. I've listened to him throughout his whole career, and he finally retired this year. Dan, thanks for joining us.
Well, it's great to be here, Steve, and crowd's great, and everybody's having fun.
It's a fun time. Talk about your career, though. What got you into race calling?
You know, I'm like a rink rat, Steve. My dad did the photo finish when I was growing up. My mom ran the press elevator. My grandfather worked in security. So I was never not around the racetrack. And at 10 years old, back at Old Greenwood, there used to be an announcer in Hamilton named Paul Hanover. He had a show on CTV called It's Your Movie, was on CHML. He used to call our races. And as a 10-year-old, I used to take an old reel-to-reel tape recorder the size of a suitcase up above Paul's booth at Greenwood and call races and take them down to him after and say, what am I doing right? What am I doing wrong? What should I keep? And he was a big influence, and calling races was something I just always wanted to do.
So for us in this area, Paul Hanover, the mayor of the morning, he was.
Right.
So I lived in the same apartment building as him,
Did you?
And my locker at the golf course was beside him. So I was a big fan of his too. So he was obviously an influence for you.
Yeah, he was in the harness business and calling thoroughbred races. A guy named Tom Durkin, who called the Breeders' Cup for 20 odd years. He's a close friend. We've been friends for over 30 years. I was at his house in Saratoga. He came up for my final day to Woodbine on the 31st of May, so he was probably my biggest influence as a thoroughbred race caller.
So he's your favorite there. Tell me about other tracks that you go to, like Fort Erie. I know it's one of the most beautiful tracks, but what's your favorite other than Woodbine?
You know, Saratoga is always great, Steve. It's the mecca of racing in the eastern United States, but they used to have a thing before the Breeders' Cup. When Breeders' Cup was one day, it was called All-Star Announcers Day, and I was invited to 6 or 7 of them. So I've got to call races at Arlington Park and Monmouth Park and Belmont Park and Churchill Downs, which was really special to me because every time I watch the Kentucky Derby now, I called a race at Churchill Downs. So those were always, that's like saying to a kid, Steve, who plays baseball, how'd you like to play a game in Yankee Stadium? So those were special moments.
Exactly. One of the things that I think of when a race caller is memorizing the names. You got 20 minutes or so.
Right.
How do you do it? What's the trick?
So you don't look at the saddlecloth numbers. They have a tendency to blow up, not blow, wind catches and they tuck under the saddle. So you call thoroughbred races by associating the silks the jockeys are wearing with the horses' names. So when they come out on post parade and I'm introducing them to the people, blue and white checks is Secretariat. Turquoise with gold dots on the sleeves, that's Northern Dancer. You have a field of 14, you memorize them from the time they come on the racetrack till they go into the gate. You call that race short-term memory, Steve. As soon as the race is over, you forget about them, you memorize another 14.
Did you have a favorite horse?
Probably Wise Dan, because I liked his name.
Right.
But he raced my last 2 years at Woodbine. He won the Woodbine Mile. After he won the Woodbine Mile, he went on to win the Breeders' Cup Mile, and both years was named the U.S. Horse of the Year, so Wise Dan.
Mine, With Approval, was one of my favorites. What's your memory of him?
With Approval, I have a couple. First of all, With Approval won in 1989, and the Queen Mother came to Woodbine in 89 to make the presentation. I have a script that I have to read as she gets in the landau and comes in front of the grandstand. I'm 6 floors above the people. When I started to introduce the Queen Mother to the people, the roar was so huge. The love for her in the race on the racetrack was so great. I couldn't hear myself talk 6 floors up, and I could barely get through the script. It was that emotional. And With Approval, well, With Approval was a horse that won the Queen's Plate by a nose. Then he went to Fort Erie on the dirt and won it by a nose. And Roger Atfield told me this will be an even better horse on the grass, and he just killed them in the Breeders' Stakes to become the first Triple Crown winner in Canada in 26 years, and he got $1 million bonus from the Bank of Montreal for winning. And I had the opportunity to call 5 Triple Crown winners, but With Approval was the first in '89.
That's cool. I'm glad I asked about that. Dan, I could go on forever, but they're kicking me off here. But a real pleasure. You called all my horses winning races, and that's a real thrill, and a real thrill to meet you here today.
Steve, it's been a pleasure, and I hope our paths cross again down the road.
I appreciate that. Let's go back to the desk. Steve Foxcroft with Dan Loiselle at the Milton Sports Celebrity Dinner. Now back to Halton Insider.